Thank you to the MC. I wasn't aware that I was going to speak before dinner. It puts a bit of pressure on me to finish fast so that you guys can go straight to dinner. I have here, in terms of the salutations, Tun Daim Zainuddin, but obviously Tun is not here. But I'm really glad to be able to see some old friends here. Professor Emeritus Dr. Noma Mansor, President of the Malaysian Economic Association. Obviously, Tan Sri Dato Sri Dr. Sulaiman Mabuk, immediate past President of the Malaysian Economic Association. Prof. Raja Rasya, members of the Executive Committee of the MEA, distinguished speakers and panelists in this year's Malaysian Economic Convention, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and can I say fellow economists, good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Salam sejahtera kepada semua. It is, I think, a great honor and pleasure for me to be with you here tonight. And I hope I can address you as an audience of my peers, even though I did not practice as a professional economist, either in the private sector or as an academic. But I've seen many old faces, familiar faces, old in terms of experience, not in terms of age. And you know, I see probably some names which I've heard, but not met in person. And also many young people here in this room, you know, and it's great to be here. And I hope that we can let our hair down a little bit for those of us who still have hair, and relax a little bit, because I know that you've had quite a intense session today. I saw some news coverage of what Dr. Jomo has said about the condition of Malaysia's economy and the challenges that we have to face. And of course, Dr. Jomo also gave some quote-unquote advice to the Malaysian government. I was told by the organizers that if you want to give any advice or questions to the new government, you can go to Slido, look for the hashtag MEC 2019, and give your comments there. But I've also been told by my friend Gobind Singh, don't upload any photos or videos that may incriminate you and get you in trouble. Even under the new government, I think you'll still be investigated by MCMC, as far as I was told. Organizers, that was a joke, in case you didn't get it. Okay. I was going to say that, you know, for Prof. Jomo, if he's not here today, but if he was here, I would have asked him to upload his points of view on the CPTPP, because I think we've not heard him speak on this issue enough, especially on the part of the new government. So I'm sure that you know, his views would be taken into account. I'm here wearing three hats. Firstly, as a fellow economist and a researcher, I hope I still qualify. Secondly, as the Deputy Minister of International Trade and Industry, of which I'm not sure I'm so qualified to hold this position, but you know, I've been trying. Thirdly, as a member of the PH government with a keen interest in economic policy, and I'm sure that many of you in this room are also monitoring this space very, very carefully, giving us marks, demerit points, you know, probably more demerit points than positive marks, but I'm sure that's also taken in good spirit by the new government. And for each of these hats or roles that I'm wearing, I will try to highlight 3 points associated with these roles. And then finally, I will conclude with some remarks on the contributions of Dato' Latifah American Cheong, whom we are honoring tonight with a memorial award. This is actually the main reason why I agreed to come tonight. Not because I didn't want to spend time with you guys. That wasn't, you know, that was already an attractive enough proposition. But the fact that you know, this is a night, a dinner to honor her memory and to honor her contributions, of which I'll be sharing some of my own personal experiences on, is an important reason why I'm here tonight. The first hat that I'm wearing is as an economist and a researcher, and the first 3 points are actually requests that I make to all of you here and also to your colleagues who are not in this room, in terms of, you know, your own research contributions. And I think that under this new government, there are many opportunities to conduct collaborative research in order to inform public policy. There's a lot of room for practical economic research in many different areas, including in my own ministry, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, on issues to do with industrial policy, on Industry 4.0, which I'll be talking a little bit more about, on social welfare, and many other policies under the ambit of the new government. Prof. Raja Rasya has paid me a visit, and we've discussed already possible collaborations that we can have, and some of your other colleagues from other universities have also approached my ministry, and I'm sure that we can try to facilitate interactions with other ministries as well, including the Ministry of Economic Affairs, the Ministry of Finance, in terms of these kinds of collaborations with academia, with think tanks, and also with the private sector in terms of research collaboration. And on my part, I will try to improve academic access to data. Can I have a show of hands, those of you who work on economic research? How many of you have tried to reach out to the Department of Statistics of Malaysia to ask for data? Can I have a show of hands? How many of you have had trouble or challenges in terms of getting data from DASM? So it shows that you guys are doing proper research. That's always an obstacle that you face. And I also want to tell you, as Deputy Minister, I'm also facing similar problems. So it's not something that's new. But of course, we in government, we have probably different ways in which we want to try to access data, granulated data, right? And I've already done a little bit, on my part to try to share more data, for example, through MITI and also some of my agencies like MIDA, in terms of improving academic access to some of these research initiatives, and I think this is something that we need to have more of. The second request in terms of economic research that I like to make is to see a stronger exposure to economic research among your students, especially those of you who are in academia. Can I have a show of hands who here is still studying either master's or PhD or undergraduate? 1, 2, okay, so there are a couple of tables there. Okay, good. I think this is part and parcel of our capacity building, especially in the area of economics, and we definitely need to build more research capacity in this area. Perhaps it may even be helpful to my ministry, especially in terms of big data analytics capabilities on our Industry 4.0 journey. And this is one area that I'm very passionate about, and I'll speak a little bit more about this later when it comes to dealing with my own experience of exposing my own interns to more economic research. The third area, request as a fellow researcher, as a fellow economist, is to ask for more of the professional economists, either researchers or academics, to raise the level of public economic discussion and debate. I think this is one area where there's a lot more room now compared to before, because the media is much freer now. You can write, speak, say a lot more, perhaps, compared to before. And I think this is where we need to be able to raise the bar in terms of the larger public understanding of what economics is and also is not, so that perhaps some of the not so accurate terminology that perhaps may have been used, let's say, by my predecessor in the Ministry of Industry and Trade, not Dato' Mustafa Muhammad, whom you'll be having tomorrow, but perhaps somebody like my predecessor at the deputy level. Starts with Ahmad Maslan. I don't want to say any more. I'm sure you'll be able to find out more. And this is where I think we encourage and are glad that there have been many public interventions and intellectual inputs by economists. Of course, Deputy President of MEA, Professor Yakim Ling, I think, is he here today? Yes, Prof. Yes. You are one of the people that I always hear on the radio. I always see on in terms of the press, but I don't think we've met face to face, right? I'm not sure. Maybe my memory is failing me. It's good to hear you speak on radio, especially. I listened to your interview on BFM recently, plugging today's event, and I'm glad that you did a very good job in terms of raising the level of discussion on economics. Of course, many of us have seen Dr. Muhammad Khalid, economic advisor to the Prime Minister, appearing on TV. Of course, before the general election, he gave many heated interviews that probably put him in trouble. But yeah, I think he's in a good place now in terms of raising the level of debate on economic matters. Of course, Prof. Raja Rasia is no stranger in terms of appearing at different conferences and also highlighting many of the strengths and weaknesses of the government. And Prof. Jomo, who's not here today, I always enjoy reading his op-eds that get sent to my email account on a regular basis. But I think we probably need to do more as a profession to reach out more to the larger public, especially using Bahasa Malaysia and also vernacular languages to explain economics in layman terms, so that our profession continues to become relevant and we won't be seen as being stuck just on the ivory tower. And I myself, have been trying to, try to make the issues of trade and investment more accessible to the layman, so that they don't just see trade numbers or investment numbers being reported in the press, but they can see how this benefits them or their families or their children in terms of job opportunities, higher income job opportunities, as well as access to information that will allow them to make better choices in terms of their careers moving forward. So that's the first 3 areas that I wanted to highlight, 3 requests as a fellow economist and researcher. The second area that I want to talk about is pertaining to my ministry, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. And I want to talk about 3 challenges pertaining to trade, investment, and industry. I've been asked, and I'll start with the issue that perhaps is on the minds of many economists and many business people, which is the issue of the US-China trade war. I've been asked many times what is my opinion about this particular issue. My simple answer, to the press and also to you guys, would be to say that, long-term trade wars are not good for open economies like Malaysia and also other countries in Southeast Asia. But in the short term, we have to say this, and it's probably true. Malaysia can stand to benefit from trade and investment diversion from sources that were originally going to China, or from sources that are coming out from China. And I do want to give you assurance that domestic companies are benefiting from this trade diversion and investment diversion, and we definitely do see greater interest among Chinese companies wanting to invest here in Malaysia. However, I think the situation becomes less rosy when we talk about issues that extend beyond the trade war. When it goes into technological warfare, for example, I think this, what's being done to Huawei, this actually threatens to reduce aggregate demand in total. And there's not much that trade diversion or investment diversion can do when aggregate demand is reduced. And this has, of course, severe economic consequences in both the short run and the long run. The other challenge that's associated with the issue of China is, of course, how do we as a country, as a government, as academics, as the private sector, how do we find ways in which we can adjust our economic policy and our positions vis-a-vis our largest trading partner and also our largest country of origin in terms of investment flows, FDI flows for the past 3 years, and likely in this year as well, and probably in the next couple of years. We need a strategic engagement plan with China so that we can properly coordinate our response, whether it's from a government perspective, from a GLC perspective, or from a private sector perspective. And this is, this includes questions such as how do we attract high quality investments from China, and not just investments that are being forced out of China because of environmental reasons. How do we increase the value of our exports to China so that we can move up the value chain? How do we encourage our firms, both large and small, to invest and to venture into strategic markets in China? This is a complicated issue because of the size of the market and the complication of going into a market like China. These are just some of the sample questions that my ministry is dealing with, and the government as a whole is dealing with on a regular basis. The other big issue which my ministry has to grapple with is the issue pertaining to the future of free trade and the role of the WTO, or the World Trade Organization. Reform of the WTO is needed, but there are some countries, actually just one country in particular, which seems to want to blow up the whole system without offering any real alternative. It's really important for a country, small trading country like Malaysia, to push for a multilateral approach in coming up with the best pathways for WTO reform, rather than to see countries pursue unilateral approaches. And I myself only realized the importance of the WTO after taking up this position at BT. I think I'm in a quite privileged and unique position to be able to see how WTO can and should be a very effective platform in terms of resolving our trade disputes. Let me just give you one example. This is probably out of the attention span of most Malaysians, but the steel industry is one that's always very sensitive to different import and export trends, and we always get, how shall we say, complaints from the steel sector upstream in Malaysia wanting MITI to take anti-dumping measures against other producers in other countries who have flooded the domestic market with their products. At the same time, we have downstream steel players who tell us, look, MITI, you have to take care of the downstream players because we also produce steel-related products for the mass consumption, and you need to keep our prices low so that we can continue to supply our products to the larger market at affordable prices. This is where WTO rules and regulations come in, because if we do not have this, then it will be a free-for-all. We would not have a proper mechanism in which we can mediate between people from the upstream and the downstream sector in this particular industry, and also in other industries as well. For those involved in the construction industry, for example, the issue of cement prices is already being contested and debated, and I'm sure the issues of dumping and importing will also come into the picture when we deal with some of these products. So this is talking about WTO, and when we want to talk about the larger global trade picture, we also need to talk about free trade agreements. In the context of Malaysia, we've already signed and ratified 13 free trade agreements, and this includes our free trade agreements in the context of ASEAN. We are currently negotiating one free trade agreement called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which involves China and India, and which, if successfully concluded, hopefully by the end of the year, it will be the largest free trade agreement in the world. Of course, there's always the contentious issue of the CPTPP, whether or not Malaysia is going to ratify it, and this is where I would encourage more economists to offer your views. I'm sure that it is not just Professor Jomo and also Ideas, the think tank Ideas, that have views on this. You know the joke about how you say when you put two economists together, you probably get 3 or more opinions. But for the CPTPP, seems that this debate is a little bit more muted in the Malaysian context. In the Malaysia Baru, under Malaysia Baru, I think there's much more room for us to debate and contest those ideas, and it's good that we can actually agree to disagree in a public setting on issues such as these. The last issue or last challenge to do with my ministry is with regards to Industry 4.0, and this is where I think the research that has been done by Professor Raja Rasya has been quite helpful to my ministry. What he's done in other countries, and just to let you know, all of you know, a little bit of the challenge that we're facing. Whenever I talk to SMEs, whether it's in my constituency or outside, I tell them, look, we have this great Industry 4.0, Industry Forward plan that MITI has launched last year, at the end of October by our Prime Minister. You can apply for all these different benefits. You can apply for a readiness assessment framework that we're going to give to you for free. You know what their response is? Hey, can I have more foreign labor? That is their response to me. And I think this is part and parcel of the challenge that MITI has. How do we adjust to the expectations of many of the manufacturers in our country, especially the SMEs that seem to be over-reliant on foreign workers, but at the same time, give them some room in order to be able to encourage them to embark on this Industry 4.0 journey to more automation and also usage of different Industry 4.0 pillars. So that's for MITI. The third issue I want to talk about quickly, because I know you're hungry, would be the economic direction for Malaysia 2020 and beyond. And I understand that this morning a representative from the Ministry of Economic Affairs has already talked about our plans for the 12th Malaysia Plan. I just want to add three areas where I think it's important for us to talk about, not just here in this room, but also have a larger conversation in the public realm. The first is to do with the fourth industrial revolution. Just now I talked about Industry 4.0, and this is MITI's own initiative in the manufacturing sector. If Malaysia is to transform itself to a developed country status, we need to embark on the fourth industrial revolution journey across all sectors and across all ministries. And this fourth industrial revolution must penetrate to all sectors of the economy, not just MITI, but other ministries as well. Ministry of Education, Ministry of Human Resources need to provide the kind of training in order to train our workers for this digital revolution. And the other sectors need to get involved as well. The Ministry of Agriculture, for example, can learn and adopt different farming technologies that have been adopted in other countries. This is just some examples of how we need to embrace this revolution across all ministries. That's the first sort of like a new economic direction, which I'm sure will be reflected not just in the 12th Malaysia Plan, but also in the 4th Industrial Master Plan, which is under the ambit of my ministry, MITI. The second economic direction that I think we need to focus on is on the issue of sustainability. Not in terms of seeing sustainability as putting in regulations that will restrict economic activity, but seeing sustainability as a driver of economic growth. This is where I think we can see sustainability as a push for new economic growth opportunities. And one particular area that I'm very encouraged by under the new government, of course I'm biased in this way, would be the renewed activity that we can see in the renewable energy sector under the leadership of Minister Yeo Bee Yin at MESTEC. This is I think a big contrast with what was done in the previous government, and many players in the renewable energy sector are seeing new growth opportunities that were not present before. And this kind of sustainability thinking as economic opportunity also needs to penetrate to all levels of government and all ministries as well, not just to be stuck in MESTEC. We see buzzwords such as green economy, circular economy, and I think this is part and parcel of how we need to incorporate the thinking of the Sustainable Development Goals into the government of Malaysia. And in fact, almost all of the 17 SDGs are directly or indirectly related to issues of sustainability. The third area of economic direction that I want to highlight would be the need for strategic deregulation and competition. I think this must be introduced in order to increase innovation, increase consumer choice, and also bring down producer prices. A focus will be on the Anti-Monopoly Task Force under the Ministry of Economic Affairs. We're going to have our subsequent meeting on Wednesday to hear some of the reports on some of the sectors of the economy that have been given focus on, such as, for example, the provision of medical, pharmaceutical products to the government, the monopoly that certain companies enjoy in the rice sector, for example. So I think this, must also filter down to all levels of government. These are just three examples of what I think we need to focus on, and ultimately, with this kind of focus, it must and will translate into better paying and higher value-adding jobs for all. And I think when this can be felt by the larger Malaysian public, it would be sort of like vote of confidence for the activities of the new government. My last point before I end and before we can have our dinner, I would probably say that you can forget about everything else I've said today. Just remember what I'm going to say now in regards to acknowledging the accomplishments and also the contributions of Datuk Latifah Merican Cheong. I'm sure many of you in this room know her very well, much better than I do. But I had the honor and the pleasure of interacting with her before she passed away in a couple of settings. And I just want to highlight three interactions or stories about her, which I think encapsulates who she was as a person, and how her spirit continues to live and radiate in many of us here in this room. She was, of course, most recently known as a founding member of the G25, and I think there was reference made to that in the video that was shown just now. She was very courageous in speaking up for good governance and institutional reforms prior to the 14th general election, when it was not so safe to do so. Many of you in this room would probably have wanted to speak up, but perhaps because of certain restrictions that you had to face as academics working in the public sector, it was not so easy. But of course, Dato' Latifah having left the public service, she was in a freer position to say a lot more. And what I really appreciated in terms of her activism in the G25 was that she brought discussions to the table in terms of institutional reforms on good governance. I remember her working with different foreign embassies and different institutions such as IDEAS to bring together foreign experts to come in to talk about issues of good governance and transparency and institutional reforms, including parliamentary reform. And I think she wasn't just criticizing for the sake of criticizing, but at the same time also providing very good alternatives, some of which has been implemented, some of which would be implemented hopefully before the next elections. And I think this is a very important legacy that she has left behind. The second area I want to highlight in terms of my understanding and also exposure to her leadership and her initiative was her role in pushing for the Asia Women's Leadership University, or the AWLU. She was one of the founding directors, and although this project subsequently didn't take off in Malaysia for a variety of reasons, I really admired her efforts in opening up doors and encouraging the people who are working on the ground for this project. And this, I think, encapsulates or shows her spirit in wanting to encourage more women to get involved in this particular area and to build up future women leaders in the liberal arts. And I'm sure that her role also extended to encouraging more women to get involved in the economics profession and also in the MEA. I think we still have a long way to go. I noticed in the program, the one that was sent to me, out of about 40 panelists and moderators, I made a rough estimate about probably 6 or 7 of them are women. So it's a ratio of less than 20% or about 20%. So I think we have much more work to do, and if we want to honor the spirit of Dato' Latifah, this is something that I think we need to encourage more of. My last contribution in terms of her role in the economics profession would be to highlight her role as an advisor to the Association of Malaysian Economics Undergraduates, or AMEU. I think most of you in this room may not be aware of this organization. It's a very young organization. They're celebrating their second year of establishment this year. And it started last year, and before her passing, Dato' Latifah was instrumental in opening doors for this group of young people and helping them organize their first AMEU public debate competition. And she used her influence to invite Tan Sri Rafida Aziz to give the keynote opening at this particular competition. I also participated in this particular event as a judge, and also to encourage and talk to the aspiring economic undergraduates from various universities, both local and foreign. And as part of my little own contribution, I continue to take interns to train them to think critically on economics and also other public policy issues. And I do encourage all of you in this room who are in position to be able to influence young economists that this is an area where you can also play your part as your way of honoring Dato' Latifah and her contributions. So with that, I'd like to end my speech and once again say thank you for spending a little bit more than 30 minutes listening to me ramble on different things to do with economics and other related issues. Thank you.
Thank you, YB, for the most liberting speech. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the launching of the Dato' Latifah Merakan Cheong Memorial Award. Kindly watch the video that has been prepared for this launch. also to come on stage to give a few words.
Assalamualaikum and a very good evening. Yang berhormat Dr. Ong Kian Ming, yang berbahagia Tan Sri Sulaiman dan Puan Sri Nur Laili, Dr. Ye, Deputy President, Vice President, the family of late Datuk Latifah, Mr. Chong, and the children, colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. I shall add no more to what Dr. Ong has mentioned about Datuk Latifah, but I would like to acknowledge a few individuals who have contributed to the establishment of the medal. And the person is Mrs. Khoo Siu Man, Dr. Kwek Kien Teng, Tan Sri Lin Sian, and also Datuk Khairil and Tan Sri Sharif. I'm surprised that Tan Sri Sharif is not here tonight. Maybe he's not in the country, but otherwise he was with us, meeting up with Tan Sri Lin in order for us to formulate or to come up with the award. But on a personal note, like Dr. Ong, Datuk Latifah is also a friend. Not just a colleague to me, and she made a condition that before she accepted the president position of the association, that I would be the deputy. So if you notice in one of the photographs, I was not there because that was a photograph of the exco that was nominated and elected, and I wasn't around because I was abroad. Yeah. So I think Datuk Latifah or the late Datuk Latifah assumed that I would say yes to that, and I'm glad I did because I was with her on the last formal engagement that we had. Datuk Ma was there when we presented our memorandum and the documents that the association has prepared from our previous seminars and forums that we've had. So that was very memorable. I didn't realize that that was the last time that I saw her, and to be with her. Yeah, I think that was the last time many of us saw her. Yeah. But on a personal note, I think Datuk Latifah was blessed that she met Mr. Chong when she was an undergraduate student at the Faculty of Economics and Administration, University of Malaya. They are blessed with 3 boys, and you have 5 grandchildren. So that's how we continue to live through our children, and you know, in Islam we believe that our children, and I think other religions beliefs as well, that it's our children that will continue our good work, inshallah. Yeah. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for being patient. To wait before we proceed with our dinner, but let's maybe give a 5-minute silence for Datuk Latifah. Yeah, shall we do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Datuk, for such a moving speech. Can you please remain on stage as we'd like to invite Yang Berhormat Dr. Ong Kian Ming and the family of the late Datuk Latifah Marakan Cheong to launch the Datuk Latifah Marakan Cheong Memorial Award.